feeling pressure.
And good morning, evening, or afternoon, depending on what part of the globe you're on and what time zone you are in. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for tuning in and not tuning out. I am your host, Brian G. Skeptically speaking. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's a real treat, isn't it? What are you going to do? I mean, we've got Donald Trump sleeping. YouTube is not live. It says it's live. Interesting. Okay. All right, well, while we look into that fiasco, but yeah, we've got Donald Trump literally falling asleep at a funeral. I mean, that's embarrassing enough, isn't it? Don't you think? Oh man, it's like, are we sick and tired of being embarrassed yet? Are we tired of it yet? You know, what are you gonna do? I mean, here he is. He's got his mouth wide open. You know, mouth wide open, falling asleep, looking down at his shoes, looking down at his feet, or whatever. What are you gonna do? But how is everybody else doing? How y'all doing? Everybody doing okay? Everybody have a good weekend? Besides being embarrassed in front of the entire world stage? It says it's live. I don't know what you're hearing. But how is everybody else doing? How y'all doing? Yeah, it says I'm live, so I'm not sure. Let's Farm is already there. But yeah, so Donald Trump, good to see you, Let's Farm. So yeah, a lot of things are happening. And it's just so sad. It really is. You know, we just can't have a normal president for once. I, for one, would like to be able to get to a point where we have boring politics yet again. I mean, is boring politics too much to ask for? It's just, yeah, that's okay. I got it. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, can't we just make politics boring again? Can't we just elect boring leaders? Are you tired of the shit show? Are you tired of the just out and out embarrassment of it all? You know, because what we're embarrassing ourselves over and over and over and over again. Why do we keep doing that? You know, why do we keep doing that? Why do we keep electing government officials that are no more intelligent and in many cases less intelligent than we are? You know, it's just sad. It really is. We've got to get to a point where, hey, let's elect leaders. Let's elect leaders that are not only smarter than us, but hey, know how to govern and actually want to do the job. You know, we just got to stop this ridiculousness. You know, just stop the ridiculousness, stop the stupidity. Good to see you, Joe. Joe Nocturnal. But, yeah, buddy. So, anyway, in case you missed it, good morning, evening, or afternoon, depending on what part of the globe you're on and what time zone you're in. You can find us on YouTube, TikTok, which you are here, Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads, Substack. So, words of wisdom for today. We'll just leave it at that. We lived in peace for so long that we've neglected the possibility of evil, and we may have forgotten how to fight it. You know, we've been in a fool's paradise in this land of ours. You know, and another quote is, the foul racist MAGA bigots would rather suffer less than you are than thrive next to you. So a person who's willing to throw black people under the bus for the sake of what? You know, for their proximity to white supremacy, everybody suffers. You don't get to win. You don't get to win. So this is their entire mindset, you know, and that's why we're in the predicament we are in. That's why they cannot be reached with logic or reason, because they did not use logic or reason to get to the views that they hold now. They're incapable of learning and will only change when their suffering reaches unimaginable proportions. That means once they start feeling the consequences of their own actions. And in fact, even then, I sometimes wonder. I sometimes wonder. But we've got a lot to go into. So, let's get into it. If you're okay with joining, so P and Joe, let's see here. I don't know if I can connect. I didn't grab another speaker. Soft times make soft people who make hard times, which makes hard people who make hard times. I don't know. See, this same. Let me see. Let me pin this. This same comment here, this gets used by right-wing Republican MAGA bigots who like to pick on liberals for being too soft. You know, soft times make soft people who make hard times, which makes hard people who make hard times. But you know what? I think I'm trying to think of how I can address this. Oftentimes, soft people make hard times. Well, in order to have hard times, you have to have people in power. You have to have people in power who can make decisions which make hard times. I would say ignorant and stupid people make hard times. Normally soft people, you know, we often talk about soft people as like being soft-hearted, soft-spoken, soft this. I don't know that is true per se. I don't know. I can try, P and Joe, I can probably try to do a call and see if that comes through. I got my new laptop today, or actually yesterday, and I was working all night to get it set up. So this will be the last time, I'm hoping this will be the last time that I use my Macintosh computer, which it just cannot handle. I literally spent 45 minutes waiting for this to boot up. But yeah, let's get to our first pick of the day. Tony Michaels on Blue Sky and X, formerly known as Twitter, says, here's a picture of the Pope in a wheelchair meeting with J.D. Vance. He meets J.D. Vance and then dies of cringe. Yeah, well, that is true. It's an idea. You alluded to losing the ability to fight evil because of extended peace. But you know what? I've come to understand it's not strong people that fight evil effectively. You know, when we think of strong people, we think of people that are just, you know, they're just strong in every other way. But they lack the critical faculties to fighting evil. I wonder if maybe it is soft people that are needed to effectively combat evil. Because oftentimes, hey, what's going on, Christ before Jesus? You're in luck. Hopefully, we're going to be finishing your book today. I'm hoping. Christ before Jesus. We're still in chapter 8. And that's going to be on the agenda. Hopefully I can finish this up and then move on to that part of the book. But we're almost finished. We're almost through. The last chapter is, woo! It is massive. Yeah, so... Oh, man. So J.D. Vance meets with Pope, and then the Pope just dies hours later, I guess. Coincidence? I think not. Okay. I mean, when you're subjected to that kind of evil, that level of stupidity and ignorance, I'd want to die too. So the Pope died Monday of a stroke or cardiac arrest. He was 88. As problematic as he was and how he would smooth over abuse cases, he may have been the last progressive Pope the Catholic Church will have. Think about this. What's the over-under on a new black Pope? Well, here's my problem. Here's what I hope doesn't happen. If the Pope is selected from an African country, unfortunately, Christianity has just smashed these countries. Anywhere where Christianity has been dominant, I have a feeling he will be a super right-wing Pope. You know what I mean? And this is why I say I think this is going to be Pope Francis may or may not. He may be the last seemingly progressive Pope. Now, think about it. Think about it. Pope Francis wasn't really that, shall we say, progressive. I mean, he was compared to the Nazi brown shirt, Benedictus, that they had before. And when you compare, I mean, if that is that's your comparison for progressive, oh, the Catholic Church has got a long way to go. Yeah, soft isn't the best word. Maybe warm, genuine, passionate people who take action, not just pray. Exactly. You know what? I can agree with that, Bonds. I can agree with that. So the Pope dies after meeting one of the most insufferable asswipes on the planet. And we're shocked? Is anybody surprised? I'm not. I'd probably die too. The cringe factor alone would have just keeled me right over. There is a group within the Vatican that longs for the days of the right wing. They yearn for a more regressive fundamentalist bigotry. They've been chomping at the bit. They really have. There is a right wing faction within the Vatican that has been just wanting to go back. And it's really sad. It really sad. So, MAGA cult slayer on X, he has a video. I'm going to mute while this is playing, but this is I guess I'm going to describe it for you because you can only hear what's going on, but it is really bad. These right-wing MAGA cultists have taken things too far, and I'll describe it as we go.
Déjeme pasar. ¿Me puede dejar pasar, por favor?
I don't give a shit. ¿No entiende? And I don't care.
No. Yo no le estoy molestando, señora.
I told you not to come down the street anymore, and I meant it.
Literally pushing this woman down the street. Pushing her down the street.
No. What? Go away. No, go.
Hey, you can't do that to her like that.
Well, I didn't mean to push her down, but she's not allowed to be on the street either.
Oh my fucking God. This white racist bitch literally pushed this woman. She's got this big cart with treats and snacks that she's selling. Literally pushed her back down the sidewalk out into the street. So somebody else was holding a camera and was watching this interaction, and she literally falls into the street. This fucking bitch had the audacity. This is Trump's America, people. Are you paying attention yet? Welcome to Trump's America. I mean, the sheer audacity to think you have the right to put your hands on somebody, push them out into the total disregard for life and property and everything. Unbelievable. And I tell you what, she's on camera. She's got 2 vantage points where she's been videotaped and recorded. She's going to be in for a hard time. Yeah, vile, absolutely vile. So this is an uber racist who's taken it upon herself to harass someone who's just trying to make a living. You know, she doesn't have the proper credentials to get an actual good job. She's here legally, but she's not able to work. Meanwhile, this asshole is shoving her out into the street. And I'm so glad we got 2 camera angles. What an absolute asshole. I hope she loses her job and her business or whatever she's got going on in her life. Imagine being this nasty to people and you don't even know. And you know what brings down property values? Because one of the things she was saying in the video was, "Oh, you're bringing down property values." You know what really actually brings property values? Racist bigots like that. Not the ones selling the snacks and knickknacks. This is aged like milk and bad mayonnaise. I feel sorry for her dog. The camera panned down to her dog, and this poor dog, can you imagine living with this cantankerous, nasty ass and having to depend on this cretin for your very existence? We need a GoFundMe to rescue the dog. You know what I mean? We need to get that dog rescued. Somebody. Rescue operation. Oh, speaking of racist cretin, here's Nancy Mace.
I asked if you're doing any more this year. It was one simple question.
Yeah.
Are you doing a town
I've already
hall this
done
year?
one. I'll do
Are
plenty
you doing
more.
any more this year? It was a simple question.
You're always invited.
Okay, sweet. Well, look
And
out
by
for
the
an actual
way,
invitation
I
for the
voted
next
for
one.
gay marriage twice.
What does that have to do
So
with me?
I'm just saying, it has everything to do with
Do
you.
you think everything about me has to do with gay marriage?
I do,
That's
absolutely.
your first stance when you
Yep.
speak with me?
Absolutely.
There's no other humane
If you want to get in my
conversation you
face
can
about
have
town
me?
halls, you should have shown
There's
up to
no
one
other
last
humane
year.
thing you can talk about me just saying, "Oh, I support gay marriage."
Yeah,
That's the
because
only
you're
thing
getting
you
in
have
my
to
face
say.
about a town hall. You
All I
could
did
have
was
gone
ask you one
last year.
simple question from right
Would you
over
like
here
me?
is if you have any plans to have more town hall this year.
I have town
That
halls
was one
every year.
question.
I have over a dozen
Okay.
every year.
Great. That was my entire question. You didn't have to go
Yeah.
into the spiel about
You
everything
could
else
have
you wanted to.
come to any of them last year.
Okay. And I'm
I had
asking you
over a
about this year, not
dozen.
2024. But
Where
for
were you the year
right?
before that?
Okay.
Or the year before that?
It was a simple
Oh,
question. I
because
asked
you know
if
what?
have
Because
any
you
more that
people
you're
on the
going to
left
this
are
year or not.
crazy.
So I'm
You're
on the left.
absolutely fucking crazy.
I'm absolutely fucking
You are.
crazy.
And get out of my face.
You're insane.
Goodbye.
You're insane.
Fuck you.
You're gonna fuck me. You're
Yep.
gonna be voted
Bye.
out so fast this year. I
I'm
can't
not.
wait for you to fucking
I'm
go
not.
into
I
the
won by
dirt.
so much.
You're a disgrace to this state. That's what you are. You're a disgrace. I asked you a simple question, and you just to go on this tirade and tell me "fuck you."
Yeah, fuck you.
Disgusting.
Get out of my face.
Fuck you. How about
Get out of my
that?
face.
You're nasty.
Try it again.
This is a
What's your name?
constituent, folks.
What's your
You're a
name?
nasty bitch. That's
What's
my
your name?
You say "fuck me"?
Yep, I
That's
sure
the
did.
first thing you're gonna say to me is "fuck me" for asking
Absolutely.
you a question?
Get the fuck out of my face.
Fuck you.
Now.
Fuck you.
Fuck you.
Fuck that.
You couldn't take me on, baby. Stay the fuck away from me.
This person posted this video thinking this was going to make her look like the good guy. This is Nancy Mace. This nasty piece of shit. Unbelievable. This is how she talks to constituents, folks. This is the one who's trying to outdo Marjorie Three Toes in anti-trans bigotry. Oh my God. Oh. Oh, sorry. If you're on the YouTube, I apologize. That's a nasty close-up of Nancy Mace. Warn me before you do that shit. God damn. You can find me on YouTube at Skeptically Speaking. We're live now. Like and subscribe. I'd appreciate it. And when you're on the YouTube, you can see what I'm doing, what videos I'm showing, and what pictures I'm showing. So you probably won't be able to see that on TikTok. TikTok's not allowing me to merge the two streams. I don't know why. But this is this person, I mean, she has no right to critique anybody who's trans at all. None. She's got no right to talk. Oh man, she looks like she's aged like a leather belt left out in the sun. For fuck's sake. This is who the voters voted away. This is who they voted for. I mean, harassment and bullying. Oh, terrible. Find me on YouTube. You'll be able to see me there. TikTok's being a little bitch. So, gross. Anyway, moving along. You know, the fact that this person thinks that she's going to be a hero and she's not. You know, if you're going to look like a man and represent as a man, I will refer to you as such. So I'm going to start calling Nancy Mace sir from now on. This sir does not work for you. You know, I don't give a shit. So, you know, so they film themselves literally. This guy films himself crashing out at a constituent. You know, all the person said was, "Are you going to do another town hall? We'd like to hear it from you." That was the question that made Nancy crash out. Calm down, sir. We love the TikTok shop in case blah, 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 blah. So, oh my gosh. It's unbelievable. Can't say anything about anyone without it being seen as... Let's look at a few comments under her post. Do you want to know what people commented under her video? I do. Ugh, not again. Don't give me that. Ryan Sheed said, you support a felon, fraud, and a rapist 24/7 with zero political substance. You went off because a lying piece of shit who doesn't do their job is always angered by being questioned. Correct? I have to say that is correct. Wu-Tang Clan for the Children says, shut the fuck up. You're just mad he looks better in those Daisy Dukes than you ever would. Art Candy says, you're a bigot. Keith Oberman says, self-institutionalize. Just the facts. Says, oh, right. He really looks like an unhinged lunatic. The unhinged lunatic is the one behind the camera. Oh, goodness. Let's get some more comments, shall we? Eye Roller says, just for context, remember the guy Mace claimed injured her arm with a handshake? Charges were dropped by the prosecutor because it was nonsense. Yeah, Nancy Mace claimed that her arm was injured via handshake. That is how snowflakey these right-wingers are. They're just snowflakes. And just the facts. Oh, Alex Cole says, you need professional help, Nancy. True that. Rhonda says, what purpose did this even serve for you to engage like this? Do you have daddy issues? American Veteran says, you are an unhinged lunatic and everyone knows it. Brown-eyed Susan says, don't be a cunt. Don't be with a picture of a bee. Yeah. It just goes on. I mean, she just got slammed. Tira At says, you have real problems, Mace. Thinking this makes you look good and tough is ridiculous. You just look like someone who wants publicity more than anyone and shows little common sense or respect for others. No Silence Now says, it's literally on video. The only one unhinged here is you. Take your meds and see if you need to increase the dosage. Anybody needs the kind of mental instability running loose, you need to resign. EP says, imagine posting this video and then posting things about Jesus on your timeline. You people are walking, talking hypocrites. No wonder the church is filled with schmiedophiles and sexual assaulters, because none of you are actually there to serve the Lord. You're just there to look, and then it cuts off. New Yorker. New Yorker says, what a classy way for a member of Congress to talk. Do you kiss your husband with that mouth? Oh, I forgot. They both walked out on you. Oh. So she was married, and then she had a fiance, and then they both said nope. Balto Star says, what a truly horrible person you are, harassing and insulting your constituents in an obscene manner simply because they're gay and asking you a simple question about your work as their representative in Congress. What purpose do you serve in this world? Ocean's Paradise says, do you identify as a jackass? Because that video shows you unhinged and defensive. Maybe you should always have a cam on so you actually show the other party being unhinged if they were actually being unhinged, and then it gets cut off. Yeah. I can't think of a single comment that I disagree with. You know? It's very well done. And yeah, it's like these people think that they're, you know, they're making a point, and it's like, no, you're not. You're actually embarrassing yourself. Stop. Oh my goodness. Here we are. But this is what happens when you vote for stupid people. This is what happens when you vote in favor of white supremacy. This is the kind of stupidity you get. And snowflakery. You know? Let's see. Let's see what we got. JD Couch has a bad Easter, got lectured by the Pope himself about kindness and compassion. I mean, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Here's video 10.
And JD are all individually having horrible Easters. So let's talk about it, because it is quite the show. You heard that correctly. So let's start with what's going on with JD Couch, because that one's kind of the craziest in my opinion. It all started when yesterday, the literal Pope sent his deputy to lecture JD Couch on compassion. That's right, the Pope himself didn't even want to show up, so he sent the other guy to lecture JD. But then it sounds like that didn't take, because the Pope had to step in himself today and directly lecture JD. As you can see here, which I encourage you to pause to read, the Pope has been very outspoken against white. He then went on to openly condemn their contempt that has stirred with the vulnerable, marginalized, and migrants, and highlighted that they are violating the dignity of many men, women, and entire families. I don't know about you, but imagine like the leader of your entire religion and worldview stepping up to essentially say like, hey, I don't like you. That's got to be by far one of the worst days of your life. And then we had Donnie, who posted this very long and miserable rant yelling at everyone. I'll spare you from reading it, but no one who's truly happy takes this much time out of a holiday to be this hateful. And don't worry, there is a whole section where he jumps on Sleepy Joe Biden, who lives rent-free in his mind. And then we have Elon Musk, whose quarterly reports came in so bad that a once leader in the market has now fallen behind all other non-Tesla electric vehicles. And to add the icing on the cake, the sales of the Cybertruck are doing so terribly that he is pulling workers off of them on factory lines. What a shocker, you made a transition as a truck, and I'm like truck focus. And you might say to yourself, wow, I don't think their weeks could get any worse, but it's only Sunday, and I always have hope. Happy Easter, everybody.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yeah, this is what you get. Imagine a leader of an entire church of millions of people is saying, you know what, you're so far off the path that I don't even like you. I don't even want to be around you. And like I said, this poor Pope took time out of his day to deal with a complete and utter cockwomble. And I think it was too much for him. I'm not saying that J.D. Vance is responsible for the death of the Pope. I'm just saying the coincidences, I don't know. I just don't believe in coincidences. But moving on. It's all fun and games till it hits home. You know, the game is rigged by white people against white people, but it first hurt black people. And it's like we didn't care so much because it wasn't happening to us. And now it is. And now we give a shit. Here we go. Number 11.
If I right now decided that I wanted to play Monopoly with you, and for 400 rounds of playing Monopoly, I didn't allow you to have any money, I didn't allow you to have anything on the board, I didn't allow for you to have anything, and then we played another 50 rounds of Monopoly, and everything that you gained and you earned while you were playing that round of Monopoly was taken from you. That was Tulsa, that was Rosewood. Those are places where we built black economic wealth, where we were self-sufficient, where we owned our stores, where we owned our property, and they burned them to the ground. So that's 450 years. So for 400 rounds of Monopoly, you don't get to play at all. Not only do you not get to play, you have to play on the behalf of the person that you're playing against. You have to play and make money and earn wealth for them, and then you have to turn it over to them. So then for 50 years, you finally get a little bit and you're allowed to play. And every time that they don't like the way that you're playing, or that you're catching up, or that you're doing something to be self-sufficient, they burn your game. They burn your cards. They burn your Monopoly money. And then finally at the release and the onset of that, they allow you to play and they say, okay, now you catch up. Now at this point, the only way you're going to catch up in the game is if the person shares the wealth, correct? But what if every time you share the wealth, then there's psychological warfare against you to say, oh, you're an equal opportunity hire. So if I played 400 rounds of Monopoly with you and I had to play and give you every dime that I made, and then for 50 years, every time that I played, if you didn't like what I did, you got to burn it like they did in Tulsa and like they did in Rosewood, how can you win? How can you win? You can't win. The game is fixed. So when they say, why do you burn down the community? Why do you burn down your own neighborhood? It's not ours. We don't own anything. We don't own anything. Trevor Noah said it so beautifully last night. There's a social contract that we all have, that if you steal or if I steal, then the person who is the authority comes in and they fix the situation. But the person who fixes the situation is killing us. So the social contract is broken. And if the social contract is broken, why the f do I give a shit about burning the Football Hall of Fame, about burning the Target? You broke the contract when you killed us in the streets and didn't give a f. You broke the contract when for 400 years we played your game and built your wealth. You broke the contract when we built our wealth again on our own, by our bootstraps in Tulsa, and you dropped bombs on us. When we built it in Rosewood and you came in and you slaughtered us. You broke the contract, so your Target, your Hall of Fame. As far as I'm concerned, they could burn this bitch to the ground. And it still wouldn't be enough. And they are lucky that what black people are looking for is equality and not revenge.
This is probably the third time I've seen that clip. And it gets me every time. It never ceases. You know, black women tried warning us going back 120, 30 years, going back to Ida B. Wells, Maya Angelou, you name it. They tried warning us against what would happen if we continued in white supremacy, when we continued down this path. And here we are. Now white people are suffering for the consequences of our actions. Now we're going through it. But see, again, why does it have to be that you only notice suffering when it happens to you? This is the problem. This is the issue. Yeah, I'm live on YouTube, so you can actually see the clip there. YouTube allows me. I can't post the video here, I could post it separately. I just not while I'm live. But why is it that we care only when we are the ones suffering? You know? It's called empathy. Other people are suffering outside of our own sphere of influence, outside of our own reality. I mean, little children realize this. Little children come to this understanding. What's happened to us adults? Are we so jaded? Yes, you can find me on Skeptically Speaking on YouTube. Look for Skeptically Speaking on YouTube, please. I'd appreciate that. But yes, I mean, are we so jaded that we don't realize that people are suffering? It doesn't have to happen to us for us to feel a certain way. But by the time it gets to us, it's kind of late, isn't it? It's almost too late. So I'm going to dedicate the next half of this show and just let black people speak. I've got a lot more where this came from.
Any security professional, military, government, or otherwise, would be fired on the spot for this type of conduct and criminally prosecuted for being so reckless with this kind of information.
A few years later.
We confirmed last night that Secretary Hegseth did have a second Signal chat that included his brother, his wife, and his lawyer, in which he disclosed sensitive details about U.S. military operations against the Houthis in Yemen.
So we got a few minutes before we get to those videos. But yeah, remember the lock her up crowd? Remember when they said Hillary had a server that wasn't set up in such a way and she should be fired. She should be, locked up for not controlling her documents. Look at what they're doing. They're literally, they have Signal chats that are actually hackable. And they're just putting sensitive information. Good to see you, Black Demus Prime. I see you. But yeah, it's like these right-wing nut jobs do not care. As long as they're the ones doing it. It's just wild to me. Wild.
For those who are upset that black people are prioritizing their mental health after the levels of betrayal that we had to endure after us warning you about Project 2025 and the threat of Donald Trump, this song is for you. And it's sad to look back in 2024. And it's sad to look back and see that you were warned before. All us blacks together trying to save democracy. But the whites just wouldn't follow, cause they found safety in supremacy. Cause it's so clear, every year it gets weirder. When your farm is gone and your check's not cashed, just put your MAGA hat on, you poor white trash. Cause I know we told you so, but that's not our problem, I know you did us wrong, but it won't be long till you reap what you sow. So one day we'll kick some ass, but tonight we're resting, I know you need us, bro, but baby, this Negro told you no.
My sentiments exactly. Yes. Yeah. He's being funny, but at the same time, it's very serious. Black people tried warning us about this shit. Black people have been warning us for over 100 years. What have we been doing with the warnings? Oh, you're just alarmist. You're just being race centered. It's like, the fuck? Unbelievable. And so racist white MAGAs are literally losing the farm. That's not a figure of speech. They are losing their farms. Because now with Trump's tariff wars against China, no one wants to buy their soy. No one wants to buy their crop. Thank you for the follows. Thank you for the likes. I appreciate that. And yeah, this could all have been avoided. You know, this could have been avoided. And we didn't take the warning seriously. You know, they tried telling us. And what did we do with it?
David Hogg, let me hire at you for a minute, because I have a question, and don't be defensive, okay? Anytime.
Let me try again. I think this video needs... I need to turn something on. I need to turn it off and turn it back on again. That is so stupid. Why that would make...
David Hogg, let me hire at you for a minute, because I have a question, and don't be defensive, okay? Anytime black people start asking questions, they get defensive, and then they be dismissive and tell black people to shut the fuck up. I got real damn questions about this primary. I don't give a damn if you decide to primary Democrats. I have no problem with that. If they ask to sleep on the wheel, get their asses off the field, I'm fine with that. However, I want to know specifics. What is the litmus test? Okay, are we doing this based off a voting record? Are we doing this based off of progressivism? Are we doing this based off of age? Are we doing this based off of gender? Race? Because historically speaking, just as Democrats have continuously attacked black legislators, and I'm not here with the motherfucking shit. I'm not here with the prejudice, progressive shit. If that's what the fuck you're doing, we're going to have a problem. So what is it? What's the litmus test? Because I really want to motherfucking know, because when you're looking at the contents of the Congress, it's the Congressional Black Caucus. Black members have not missed a motherfucking beat when it comes to motherfucking voting. We voted against the continuing resolution. We voted against the SAVE Act. So my question is, what's the damn litmus test? Okay? Because a lot of y'all will sit here and say, well, it's based off of performance. So are we basing it off of who's popular, or are we actually basing it off of performance? Because a lot of people just go off of the performative nature on it, because not everybody can be as popular as a Jasmine Crockett, even though she's also doing the motherfucking work. But however, a lot of people didn't know who the fuck Al Green was until he acted a damn fool on the State of the Union, rightfully damn so. A lot of y'all would probably be looking at Al Green and with his age and being the fact that he's held that damn seat for 20 damn years, thinking that, oh, if he doesn't retire, are we going to primary this black man? Even though this black man has done a well for his motherfucking district. I'm talking about delivering $100 million motherfucking dollars to his damn constituents. That motherfucking good. But are we going to only highlight the people who aren't seen? Because most people who are doing the motherfucking work aren't always in the fucking forefront. I want to know, what are you going to do, and are you going to target black people? Because again, historically speaking, y'all already tried to primary Hakeem Jeffries before he was even the minority leader. And I'm also looking in the motherfucking comments that people are trying to hold Hakeem Jeffries to the most impossible motherfucking standards that they didn't even hold Nancy to. But however, Hakeem Jeffries was able to do his damn job by whipping the votes to vote against the continuing resolution. Why the fuck is he gonna have to pay the motherfucking price and pay for the fucking crimes of damn Chuck Schumer? Why not hold that white bitch to that motherfucking standard? How about that? The other question is, are we basing it off of donations? Are we basing it off of small dollar donors, super PACs, dark money, all of those things? The problem that I'm having with this is, historically speaking, black candidates, black leaders, black legislators do not have the financial backing that their white counterparts have, because historically speaking, when you're looking at the numbers, the reason why these white constituents are able to give their small dollar donations is because they're giving money based off their intergenerational wealth that they built off of the enslavement of black people. Let me use the 2020 primary for an example. We had a plethora of people of color that was trying to compete to be the Democratic nominee. However, all the people of color had to drop out because they signed an agreement saying that they would not take any PAC money. Kamala Harris had to drop out because she couldn't sustain her campaign. Julian Castro dropped out because he couldn't sustain his campaign. Cory Booker dropped out. These people of color had to drop out because we could not compete and be competitive because we do not have the financial backing. What about this past election? Well, that was the exception, not the motherfucking rule. Last question. I don't want this to be a conflict of motherfucking interest, being the fact that you are the co-chair of the DNC. I don't want you to just pick somebody who's white, not right. That's my problem. Because when people run as progressive and seen as white, we saw with Kristen Sinema. She originally started off in the Green Party. She supported Ralph Nader. She ran as a progressive. Her ass was walking around here with a rainbow wig and a wet seal motherfucking dress. And y'all thought she was progressive, and turned out her ass was a snake in a motherfucking dress. Same thing with John Fetterman. He ran off of Medicare for All. He ran on Bernie Sanders' policies. Ran off of the white working class. Turns out he was nothing but an ass. What is the litmus test? And don't sit here and act like I'm goddamn crazy. I've been black for a very long time. And I know what y'all like to do to handcuff black people in order for our asses not to motherfucking compete. My question is, are you going to be fair? Is this going to be race targeted? Are you going to target the Congressional Black Caucus now, the fact that we've had the most congressional black leaders elected to office in history, period? Are you going to start chipping away at that leadership? That is my question. Answer it.
Now, before I comment on the video, Chester Porter 7 says a lot of these farmers that are suffering under MAGA rule, they're losing their farms. They did everything they could to keep black farmers from getting any aid. That is correct. Multiple black farmers were withheld certain types of aid for decades now. They were not they were not allowed to get certain aid and to get enrolled in certain programs. And because of that, a lot of them suffered. And for the first time within the last 5 years, these black farmers have been added to the program and they're allowed to get certain benefits. And then the white farmers stood up and said, wait, what about us? How come they get it? It's like, you've already had it. They're just now getting their just desserts. They're just now getting what's owed them, their due, as it were. You know? It's like unbelievable. White people just need to learn to fucking calm down. Just because a black person is progressing and doing well doesn't mean that you're being cut out. For fuck's sake. We can't get to... Oh, Jesus. Anyway, so moving on to David Hogg. When I first heard about David Hogg primarying, he didn't name who exactly he was going to primary, but he was saying that we need to primary certain Dems that are not, they're Dems in name only. Basically, he alluded to the fact of Dems who aren't doing the work. And what Kenny, Too Raw, Too Real, is saying is we need to find out what is the litmus test. Because what often is the case is black Dems are singled out. All because they come from either poor districts or they're not getting as much campaign donations. So he's wanting to know, what is the litmus test? What are we using to determine who is going to be primaried and who isn't? Because David Hogg hasn't really said much. He's been kind of vague. And if David Hogg goes after black politicians just for the sake of it, he's on thin ice. I'm all for getting rid of Dino Dems. Dems that have been in office for decades and decades and decades, and they just want to skirt the middle of the road. They don't want to create a stir. It's like, no, we have Jasmine Crockett. We have AOC. We have Al Green. We have people who are willing, who have been doing the work this entire time. You know, I don't have a list of all of the Dems in front of me, but, you know, it's like they've been doing the work for decades. Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater, as it were. So, yes, I too would like to know. Thank you for the squirrels. I appreciate the gifts. Please keep following. Please keep tapping that screen, and please share the live. I'd appreciate that. But yeah, I too would like to know what this litmus test is, because I don't want to get rid of actual Dems who are in the trenches doing the fighting and then singled out for not, bringing in enough money? It's like, no. And see, he also brought up another point. A lot of Dems had to take corporate money because they weren't getting enough donations to keep their campaigns funded. This is the problem with us. We don't seem to realize that these things cost a lot of money. To run a campaign costs millions of dollars. And if you do not have it, the only avenue is to take corporate money. So if the purity test is going to be corporate money, you might as well get rid of half the Democratic caucus. You might as well get rid of half of all Democrats. Probably more than that. So if you're going to say, okay, well, they can't take corporate money, they have to have other means of revenue. That means we have to fill in the gap. And I, for one, can't send a check for $25 to every Democrat. I wish I could. And that's the sad thing about our the state of affairs of politics in this country. All right, next video.
I'm not here to say the popular shit. I don't feel bad for none of y'all motherfuckers. Y'all sat up there and took them PPP loans knowing damn well you didn't have a motherfucking business. You thought this was free money. Remember, Trump was just giving us free money according to the sexy motherfucking Red. But y'all wanted to listen to dumbass motherfucking rappers like T.I. who told y'all to take a PPP loan knowing damn well you didn't have a motherfucking business. And you thought this was free. Now your ass is freely gonna be a motherfucking incarcerated, bitch. And I don't give a damn. Also, for all the motherfuckers that was screaming, my student loans, my student loans, my student loans, Joe Biden, Joe Biden, Joe Biden, Joe Biden. Now y'all ass is about to get y'all wages garnished. And I don't give a damn about that shit either. It was a simple damn choice. Now the payment program is gone. Now your ass can't even lower your motherfucking payments based off of how much income you got. But now they're gonna garnish and take your whole damn check away. I don't give a fuck, bitch. Fuck y'all.
Yeah, the thing is, all these people that were complaining about student debt and student loans being forgiven, I mean, if you voted third party, you are part of the problem. I'll say it again for those who may not have heard me the first time. I didn't stutter. I didn't misspeak. If you voted third party, you are part of the problem. Because you have to know third party is not recognized in all states. You're not even on the ballot in all 50 states. So there is no chance of winning third party. But you decided to do a purity test. You decided, well, Kamala Harris didn't say enough about this, that, and the other thing, so therefore I'm going to throw away my vote. And therefore, we got Donald Trump. So, you either got a PPP loan or your student debt. Well, guess what? It's all going away. Had we voted for the black woman, we would not be having this conversation right here, right now. All we had to do was vote for the black woman, who is competent, who knows politics, who understands how governments are run. Okay? She has been governor of California. She's been a state senator. She's been an attorney general. How much more qualified can you be? And we didn't show up for her. White America did not show up for Kamala Harris. So therefore, we're stuck with good old Donnie Boy. Hope your purity test was worth it. These are the consequences of fascism. These are the consequences. Well, I would say white men are more at fault because we voted in overwhelming numbers as far as, yes, apple juice. Exactly, division. Let me see. White men voted, I think, over 70% in favor of Donald Trump. That tells me she literally passed no laws and failed in every aspect. No, she didn't. In fact, she was the her tie-breaking vote as vice president. She literally broke the glass ceiling. She literally broke the record of the most legislation passed as being a tiebreaker vote. A lot of Joe Biden's policies were passed because Kamala Harris was the tie-breaking vote. So you, Oleg, you can go on and piss on about how she did nothing else. But, oh yeah, Joe says, let me see if I can pin this. Yep. Enjoy your lack of health care after the wage garnishment comes after doctors and nurses. Yeah. She passed no tax on tips. Fuck off. She's a vice president. If you wanted her to pass the tax on tips or no tax on tips, you should have voted for her. White America shit the bed. We could have had Kamala Harris. Yeah, she actually ran on real policy. That is correct. That is for sure, Nancy. And here we are. Here we are involved in a tariff war with China. Where China is literally going to Europe and South America and in other places, and they're cutting us out. Joe says, and I might not have a master's program to go to because funding is being pulled. Yeah, we're going to have a massive brain drain in this country. We're going to have a massive brain drain. All because education is being pulled. Education is being sidelined. Because MAGA doesn't care about education. MAGA doesn't see the need for it. So we're going to suffer the consequences for it. Okay, here we go. Next slide. Oh no, Arkansas. Did you know that Arkansas is in dire need of federal assistance right now? Yeah, he loves the poorly educated. American Divisions by Design says, Americans aren't going to realize until they see empty shelves. Oh, it's coming. It's coming. Look at Arkansas. Sarah Huckabee Sanders says Arkansas is in dire need of federal assistance. Who pulled that funding, by the way? Donald Trump did. MAGA did. They decided to defund FEMA, to defund assistance programs. And now the hardest hit states are going to be the southern Bible Belt states. Arkansas, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Georgia, maybe. Georgia's kind of is more purple, but Jesus Christ. It doesn't really matter. Arkansas needs help, and there's none coming because you voted in favor of defunding. Enjoy the lack of education. The dangerous ones he posted on Blue Sky. It's working. Tesla profits plunge 71% and the stock is down 34%. This is how you beat them. Tesla crashes, the boycott is working. You know what's amazing to me is the Tesla boycotts. Remember, all of the MAGA faithful swarmed all of these Tesla dealerships to, show support and solidarity and wave the MAGA flag. Well, you know what? I don't know a bigger turnoff than to be in the market for a Tesla and drive by a Tesla dealership and you see a bunch of MAGA and Trump flags waving. I would just keep right on driving past the dealership. Yeah, buddy. They played in our faces, and here we are. Here we are. Tesla is going down because a idiot involved in charge of the company decided to play with MAGA, decided to play with fascism, and now his own companies are going to suffer for it. Well, this just came in. Mack Trucks announced layoffs and says tariffs are to blame. Mack Trucks. Mack Truck builds trucks, as you know. They build trucks to transport goods and services. Well, there has been, because of the Trump tariffs, there have been so few orders. There have been so few orders. There's hardly anything to ship. People have been cutting back on the amount of Mack trucks that they order for their company. And now Mack Truck is going to have to tariff. Thank you for joining the team. I appreciate it. Kasha, thank you for the gift. Mack Truck announces layoffs. Mack Truck layoffs are impacted up to 350 employees in Lehigh Valley. Wow. This is what happens when we play with fascism. This is what happens when you elect dumb fuck Republicans. Republicans have had no new ideas. Reaganism, the Reagan administration should have been the final death knell, the warning that Republicans do not care about governing. They do not care. They want to burn it all down to the ground. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. So yeah, that means less goods and services are going to be going out. Less goods and services are going to be in circulation. Let's see. I think we've got a comment on YouTube. Let's Farm says he bent the knee. Let's see if I can. Come on now. There we go. I can see the comment now. Let's see. As a Pennsylvanian, please fucking primary Fetterman. Yeah. John Fetterman has bent the knee to fascism. He's bent the knee to Bibi Netanyahu, the president of Israel. They are against cancel culture, canceling Bud Light, and made Mexican beer the top U.S. beer. Yeah, canceling Bud Light. Can you imagine? Think about this way. Members of the Trump family have stocks in Bud Light. And when MAGA boycotted Bud Light because of, I can't think of her name, Mulvaney, she did like a small commercial for Bud Light. And she's a trans woman. And MAGA got so upset that they started boycotting Bud Light and posted videos of themselves pouring it down the drain, shooting it with an AR-15 Kid Rock, if you remember correctly. They did all kinds of stupid shit, and guess what? Bud Light went down. And guess who owns stock in Bud Light? The Trump family. The Trump family owns stock in Bud Light. And they came out and said, wait, hold it. This is affecting us. Please stop boycotting Bud Light because it affects us. We're being affected. Don't do that. It's hurting our stocks. And then, was it Modelo or what's the other brand, the Mexican beer? Dylan Mulvaney. Thank you. They canceled the Dixie Chicks back when they spoke out against W. Bush. Yes, they did. The Dixie Chicks, who are now called the Chicks, Modelo. Thank you. The Dixie Chicks, they've taken Dixie out of their name and they're just now called the Chicks, which I understand and sympathize fully, because Dixie is a pretty loaded term. It's rooted in white supremacy and slavery, so they just said, you know what, we don't want anything to do with that. We're done with Dixie. But Dylan Mulvaney, she does one commercial involving Bud Light, and MAGA's lost their mind and literally tanked the stock. Imagine Trump supporters that worked for Bud Light, their 401ks were wrapped into Bud Light, and they literally saw a loss. Lady Antebellum changed her name too. Yeah. Good for her. I mean, Antebellum, that's worse than Dixie, but okay. I just said her name on TikTok. Yes, thank you. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, I've had Bud Light. Bud Light is swill. Bud Light is, I mean, it's a cheap swill. So is Budweiser. So if you are boycotting those two beers just for the taste alone, that's understandable. But if you're MAGA and you're drinking that shit and then you say, oh, they're showcasing trans people, I have no sympathy for you at all. You have a pretty offensive things to Catholics on your panel. I don't know. You have pretty offensive things against Catholics. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what that means. I'm not. Oh, are you referring to the sexy Catholic nun I have? Okay, that could be. Yeah, whatever. I talk against religion. In fact, I have to change the background because we are going to be transitioning to let's try that again. We're going to be going to read our book, Christ Before Jesus. Let's see if I can... Oh, let's see if it'll let me. It probably won't. Yeah, okay. All right, let's get into the book, Christ Before Jesus. I was able to change it on YouTube. Now it won't let me do it here. Effects. Boom. Oh, there it goes. Yay! We're going to read Christ Before Jesus. All right, there it goes. Yay! It worked. Christ Before Jesus. All right. For those of you who are still here, thank you so much for listening. And we're going to keep going. We're going to keep reading this book, Christ Before Jesus. We've got to get through this book. I've been meaning to get through this book. And we're going to read as much as we can. Chapter 8 it has taken us this is now the 4th week to get through this book. We'll see. All right. We're transitioning from politics to religion. So I hope you stick around. What's his name? Nancy? Or no, not Nancy, I'm sorry. Landon, yes. Prepare to be offended. All right. I wish I had some music to cue up. Oh, I don't have any music queued up for our change. Christ Before Jesus. Here we go. 1 Corinthians, Romans, Galatians, and parts of 2 Corinthians are also written about this time, probably using some kind of core. What could that core be? Using some kind of core text or story Marcion picked up in modern-day Turkey or Greece, we mentioned BCE Paul as a possibility of this earlier in the book, and this is one possibility of what this core text might look like. These letters then have biographical content added paralleling Marcion's experience. By the way, if you are just tuning in for the reading of this book, we've been going into Matthew, Britt, and Jaaron Wingo's book, Christ Before Jesus, Evidence for the 2nd Century Origin of Jesus. Basically, their thesis is that the story of Jesus didn't start formulating until after the 2nd century. So basically, Jesus is a concocted character, could be based off of a historical figure, but is nothing like the character that's depicted in the New Testament. Let's see. These letters have been had biographical content, paralleling Marcion's experience. This was likely done near the end, around the time of his excommunication. We read about Paul taking money to the Jewish Christians in Jerusalem, just as Marcion does the church in Rome. We know of both their journeys to Rome being significant, and a number of these suspicious parallels, given that he is one to publish these texts. By 144, there are 10 letters with Paul's name on them, as an apostle who was too late to hear the earthly teachings of Jesus, who descended from the sky in Evangelion, but was given a separate revelation after his earthly followers, such as Peter, failed to properly deliver the good news. After the church split with Marcion, one of the collaborators likely went on to write 1 Peter in order to build him up, or perhaps intentionally make Peter look Pauline too. Given this person was responsible for some of the Pauline context, it explains why the style, theology, and vocabulary match Paul exactly. This doesn't exclude the possibility of slightly different versions of all these letters having existed. There have certainly been drafts, and given the extra endings tend to be at the end of sections within letters, it would have been relatively easy to add the content after these endings, which largely consist of greetings and names of fellow Christians. Marcion took his version and spread it across the entire Roman Empire. The opposing early Christians in Rome and elsewhere were left to react and attempt to counter the spread. We know Tertullian, writing in the 3rd century, attempted to pass an even more anti-Marcionite version off in his writings as the authentic version. His deception was revealed, however, by our discovery of early manuscripts that included some of his deletions, such as in Galatians 1:19, where he attempts to make Paul pro-circumcision. Eventually, this opposing group added a few of their own Pauline letters and found letters from Paul, James, Jude, and John to reinforce their idea of Jesus as well. They even went so far as to write their own versions of Evangelion and edit what would become Mark. While the idea of Paul's writings being a collaborative effort, perhaps within a literary school, that effectively resulted in a compromised text which seems so outlandish to some, it actually fits perfectly into how Christianity developed throughout history. Theology was often effectively voted upon, with the true doctrine being what received the most support of what was called the councils. The most famous of these is the First Ecumenical Council, known as the First Council of Nicaea in 325. But church traditions places them going back all the time to the 1st century with the Council of Jerusalem. While we discuss why this is one likely never happened earlier in the book, the next earliest council took place in 155 in Rome, around when we would expect if Christianity started the way the evidence of this book shows. Did nothing happen worthy of discussing in this 100-year period? It's more likely that the council in Rome was the first and regarded how to react to Marcion. The creation of the Pauline letters collection being a compromise, a consensus work, rather than a single author, would be in line with how Christians would develop the religion for centuries to come. It would almost be an exception to the rule if it weren't created this way. Now we move into the works attributed to John. First, we will look at the Gospel of John as a chapter-by-chapter level. As you see in Exhibit 4, it shows up by itself, with the exception of 1 John. We saw earlier, 2nd and 3rd John came up closer to the pastoral letters attributed to Paul. So these are clearly not by the same author or the other texts attributed to John. This makes sense reading these texts too. The author of 2nd and 3rd John states he does not like writing long letters. And neither of these are very long. On the other hand, 1 John is quite long for an ancient letter, and the Gospel of John is also a long text. This author seems to have no problem writing lengthy documents. Interesting. On the other hand, 1 John is quite long in the Gospel of John. I read that. This author seems to have no problem writing lengthy documents. There are numerous theories about the structure and development of the Gospel of John. But one thing we can see for certain is that the only part that is somewhat different from the rest is what is known as the farewell discourse, found in John 14 through 17. Some use it to attempt to say that an original version of John was written earlier, ending at or near the farewell discourse, and later chapters were added. This looks unlikely to be the case for several reasons. First, the farewell discourse seems to be a separate author from the rest. If it was the ending of the original text, it would come up with other chapters. Second, if this were the case, then we would see all the remaining chapters by themselves and removed from the rest of the text as far away as the farewell discourse is. Instead, while we do see 3 of the later chapters in a subgroup, there are with an earlier chapter, chapter 20, is with a number of the other texts. What it looks like we see is that while John was a group effort, it was done by a single authorship community, and no particular part stands out as distinctly different enough to date as far as a century before the rest of the text. The text it admits as much. In John 21, the compiler of the final version of the gospel effectively tells us that they have to put together stories they received from someone else. They don't claim that any part of the text was ever written by the beloved disciple, but only that he passed these things down to them to write down. Interesting. Don't commit blasphemy. For Landon, blasphemy is what we do best. We don't, we don't just spare religious feelings. Okay? We have to speak the truth, even if it makes us feel uncomfortable. You understand? So I'm sorry you feel that way, but blasphemy needs to be normalized. And, that's the only way we're getting out of this stranglehold of religious... blasphemy isn't even biblical, though. Well, no, blasphemy against the Holy Spirit is referenced. Taking the Lord's name in vain, I don't know. Divine authority through apostolic succession, 2,000 years. No, your apostolic succession is mostly made up. You have to realize, Landon, a lot of your church history was literally concocted in the 300s. I'm sorry, you're going to have to come to that realization. A lot of the church history was mostly made up. Most religions do that. They have to make things up they have to have an origin story. They have to have a compelling story in order for people to listen and to glom on. Anyway, let's move on. Instead, while we do see in the 3 of the late chapters in a subgroup, they are with an earlier chapter, and chapter 20 is with a number of other texts. What it looks like we see is that while John was a group effort, it was done by a single authorship community. Okay, they don't claim, okay, we read that. In verse 25, there's even an implication that a lot was left or cut out, and could also be a reference to other gospels, given John was one of the latest to be written. This leads us to Revelation. No part of Revelation came up with any other John text. But we did notice something interesting. Revelation was not written by one author, and the bulk of it was likely not originally a Christian text. Really? I'm going to have to see compelling evidence for that. In fact, the vast majority of Revelation was a Jewish text written in Hebrew and slightly edited later to add references to Jesus in the Christian's Greek version. What we saw were 3 distinct authors, and this lines up well with the text as well. Revelation 1 is written by a 2nd century compiler, the person who put the final letter together. The letters in Revelation chapters 2 and 3 are written by another author, this one a Christian from the 2nd century as well. Finally, Revelation 4 through 22 was written by a Jewish author at an unknown period of time, but possibly as far back as the translation of the Septuagint. I don't know if I can get behind that. How can we tell? Our runs of Stylo included every Jewish text written in Greek we could find up to the 3rd century CE. Revelation 4 through 22 consistently showed up with the Septuagint, specifically Daniel as well as Ruth, Jonah, Genesis, and others. While some will say that the themes in these texts are similar, thus they showed up together, we would remind them that Stylo doesn't look at theology or theme, but word and character frequency. The majority of words in a given text tend to be a function words such as articles, pronouns, and the like, not theological words. Aspects of the original Hebrew being translated come through, indicating that Revelation was originally written in Hebrew just as the Septuagint was. The fact that it didn't come up with later Jewish Greek text means that it was definitely a translation. The mainstream consensus is that the Pentateuch, the 5 books attributed to Moses, was translated first back in the 3rd century BCE and the translation of minor prophets and the writings was completed sometime around 130 BCE. Given we know Revelation isn't mentioned until the 150s and 160s CE, the date range for the original Hebrew text could be anywhere from the 2nd century BCE to the 2nd century CE. Of course, the original did not mention Christ as this was added by one of the 2nd century authors that would adapt the book for their purposes. So the date ultimately has little impact on the rest of the New Testament. Well, I'm going to have to look into that. The majority of the chapters 4 through 22, having Jewish origins, that is an interesting... I really don't know how to take that. Because think about it. We've always taken Revelation as being a Christian text. But what the author is saying, that the stylometric analysis shows that its origins go back to Hebrew. Yeah, I'm not quite there, but we'll give it the benefit. To demonstrate where Revelations 1 through 3 shows up, we now look at the section containing a number of authors from the 2nd century. This section will contain some of our most revealing finds and help us to date a number of our early Christian texts. First, let's revisit our dates from chapter 5. Justin Martyr, whose 3 extant texts are found here, dates to the 150s to 160s. Tatian, his student, was working up through the 170s. Given their text shows up together, this lends credence to the authorship community idea, even when one author might not be responsible. Yes, we all Old Testament books originate in Hebrew. Yes, but why do major portions of Revelation, why are they in Hebrew? Chapters 4 through 22. Why do they originate in Hebrew? This should have been a New Testament author, but it looks like Revelation is a compiled mess, and some of the major texts go back that far. That is a wild. I mean, I'm fascinated by it. Let's just put it that way. Let's see. For example, Tatian studied under Justus Martyr, and this is likely why their texts show up close to one another. Next, we get Aristides, whose apology is usually dated to the 130s, but most recent scholars push potentially as late as the 160s. Next comes Polycarp. While Polycarp's letter is possibly a forgery, Polycarp himself was active in the middle of the 2nd century as well, and no one could have written the letter in his name until after he had established a reputation in the second half of the 2nd century. Mark 13, containing the Little Apocalypse, is dated to sometime around 136 due to its reference to the Bar Kokhba revolt, and having not been added to Mark until other 2 synoptics were being written. Mainstream scholars date the Epistle of Barnabas up to 130s, and we give it a range of 130s to 160s. And the only non-canonical group or text in this group attributed to before the middle of the 2nd century is 1 Clement, the anonymous letter that knows 1 Corinthians and possibly some of Paul's other writings. Clement of Rome, the person the letter gets attributed to by Irenaeus around 180, is said to have written in the 90s. As we discuss in chapter 5, however, as we see here, there were multiple authors involving in writing this text. Every text it shows up with seems to date to the 2nd century, and as such, it is almost certainly a 2nd century text as well. To sum up, the dates of these texts seem to range from 130s to 180s, and seem to have common connection to Rome. Justus wrote in Rome. Tatian was in Rome for some time. 1 Clement was supposedly written in Rome by the Bishop of Rome. Aristides supposedly gives his apology to the emperor, possibly in Rome. Mark goes to Rome, and in the Clement Regentinius, Barnabas also goes to Rome. What we see here appears to be the church in Rome in the middle of the 2nd century writing and consolidating its theology. That then means when we see Revelation 1 and 2 to 3 here, both by different authors, the entirety of Revelation starts to make sense. One earlier author in Rome or otherwise affiliate with it wrote the letters. Another Roman Christian took these letters and added an intro, and then translated text of Romans 4 through 22 was edited and added at the end. Unsurprisingly, Justus Martyr, writing in Rome in the 150s to 160s, is the first reference to Revelation we get. He likely had access to it soon after its creation because it came from the broader community he was a part of. Oh, I'm not sure I get this. The Hebrews who never did idolatry and followed Hashem was allowed the Holy Land. Landon, first of all, the Hebrews started as polytheistic. Okay, they had worship of multiple gods. It doesn't show that they become monotheistic until after the Babylonian captivity. But before that, there are multiple references to multiple gods. The revelation was written by John and his vision was revealed to him on the Isle of Patmos. Yeah, well, unfortunately, during the time that John was said to have been living, this book did not originate there. They are henotheistic. I'm not sure I understand what that word means. Henotheistic. Canaanites. Right. Landon, exactly. They are Canaanites. The Israelites are a Canaanite tribe. That is true. The pagan Hebrews were cast into the desert like Canaan. Yeah, no. Unfortunately, that is not the case. Let's read on. First Clement. Some scholars have pointed out that First Clement seems to actually have been more of a work continuously added to rather than a single. We have a guest. I'm not sure how that happened. Unless I accidentally hit something. Okay, moving on. Let's see. Continuously added. Our stylometric analysis proves this to be the case. Let's move on. Individual chapters in First Clement are too small to run on their own, so we grouped 5 or more chapters together at a time, depending on their length. Oh, did I invite you up? Okay, I'm not sure how I did that, but my apologies. While there is no logic aside from assuring adequate size for analysis, it has still allowed us to break down the text. Break down the text into parts and look at each one a little more closely. While we see it is that with First Clement, it is indeed a composite text. First Clement 1 through 9, 60 through 65, and the prologue are written by someone entirely different from the rest of the text, but the same person. It's possible some portions of chapters 10 through 14 are written by this author as well, as these chapters show up far away from the rest of the text too, but are usually somewhat disconnected from chapters 1 and 9. First Clement 15 through 39 seems to be another author, and 40 through 59 seem to be possibly another author, though in this case might be in the same community rather than being significantly distant from each other. As mentioned above, the borders of these are a bit fuzzy given our divisions are based on size of text and not pericope. Not sure what that word means. Or theme in the text, but they give clear results nonetheless and given the doors of further research into the documents. There are also a number of other works attributed to Clement, but none of them come up with First Clement, meaning different authors use the name in other fake letters. It seems that Clement is a figure like Paul, made up as a mouthpiece placed back in time in order to push a theological agenda. Later authors picked up his name as they did with Paul and others and wrote their own views in an attempt to add credibility to them. Some of these forgeries go as late as the 9th century CE in the collection of false texts known as Pseudo-Isidore or the false decretals. Pseudo-Isidore is the name given to the authors responsible for over 100 forged documents pretending to be various figures across multiple centuries. The fake texts shaped the understanding of the church history and the implementation of church policy for centuries before they were proven to be fakes in the 1600s. Oops. The implications of 1 Clement being a composite text are quite significant. 1 Clement is usually considered the first reference to Paul outside of the New Testament. However, if the letter was actually pieced together over time, this means that it's possible the parts that mention Peter and Paul were added later. It seems they certainly were written by another author than the bulk of the letter. This means our first reference to Paul outside the Bible is now into the 130s or earliest, possibly as late as Marcion's introduction of him in 144, when publishing Paul's letters alongside Evangelion. And the next time we get into this chapter, we're going to talk about the Epistle of Barnabas. We'll let it rest for now. We'll do that next week, hopefully. Oof, man, that's still a lot of chapter. Look at that. That's only a small section of the entire chapter. Whoo! I'm telling you what, this was a dense chapter, I'm going to tell you. But it's okay. There's a lot going on in that chapter. It's the last chapter, and I'm glad you're enjoying the book. Yes, thank you. And again, I will keep on reading throughout the week. Hopefully, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we're going to keep going with American Crusade, how the Supreme Court is weaponizing religious freedom. And we've been going through this book, and we're almost halfway through. I'm loving it. So reading these books on camera forces me to go through these books. It forces me to actually read them. Because my problem is I don't read well on my own. But if I say I'm going to read this book to an audience on camera, it's like I have to finish it now. It's like I can't not do it, you know? So it helps me get through. It helps me follow through. Let's just put it that way. And with that being said, we're going to end the broadcast. Thank you so much for staying with us, you faithful few. And hopefully we'll see you all on the next live stream. Thank you so much for tuning in and not tuning out.